Welcome back to another episode of TINAH Talks. I'm Sophie and this is Kelsey. And we today are going to talk you through how to evaluate your life because sometimes we just need a little check in to make sure that we are going on the right path. Kelsey, how's your path looking at the moment? Do you feel like you're on the right one?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, as of late, there's been lots of ups and downs with my other business that I have. Not really ups and downs. I've just what has been working for me in terms of marketing and sales hasn't been working, and I thought that I was like on a track to kind of improving that, but then I've been like really stuck and I haven't been seeing the results that I want. But I just signed up to a new program. And so I'm really excited about that. And so I'm feeling that renewed energy of like, okay, I think I found a program that's going to fit really well because it got all three things that I wanted in it with like community, actual like courses, templates, like kind of not done for you, but like they provide you with the material and one-to-one coaching. So it's got the trifecta, which I'm really pumped about. So I'm feeling like good in a good place. Not to share too much information with everybody, but like I feel like I'm getting my hormones in check because like my period is much better this month. And yeah, and I'm like back to working out and kind of having like my slow mornings and stuff. And so yeah, I'm feeling like I'm on track with where I want to be if I were to evaluate my day right now.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I think sometimes we can kind of get caught up in our like day to day and we forget to kind of check in with ourselves to make sure that, things are going in the direction that we want them to, because sometimes we might be like met with just barrier after barrier after barrier and not really understand why we're hitting those barriers. Like you just said, like some things you felt like you were kind of being blocked with like your sales and your marketing in your business. And sometimes unless we take a second to like stop, look back and understand like why that's been happening, literally evaluating the situation, I think it's really hard to understand like what's our next step forward, because we kind of need to look back in order to actually move forward, right? So I think evaluating your life at any point where you are feeling maybe a little bit stuck, or even if you're not feeling stuck, you just want to do like that little check in with yourself, is actually a really important part of like life. And like we've done an episode previously on like different seasons in life, and this is definitely an activity that you can do after every single one of those seasons ends, I think. Um so I guess like, where do we start with this topic? I guess the first thing is like kind of how do we actually evaluate our life, and how do we actually identify if we need to make a difference or like change paths or change directions. And I think one of the key things to recognize is if you are meeting resistance in every single thing that you are doing, it may or may not be the right thing to kind of keep pursuing. Like, fair enough, you might, particularly if you're a business owner, you might definitely face resistance initially because you're learning something new, you're in a learning phase. But if you're continuously facing blocks, I think it's a sign sometimes to tell you that maybe you shouldn't necessarily go in that direction. I don't know. What do you think? Like, where do you think, when you first kind of recognized maybe in your business you wanted to make a change, like how did you kind of come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I think for me, when I start to realize like if oh like maybe I'm not on the path that I need to be on or things basically it's my mental health. My mental health is always a like immediate sign of what's going on. So like if my sleep starts to become really poor, where I'm having a really hard time, like I'm someone I love my sleep, but if I'm having a really hard time falling asleep because I can't shut my brain off, and then I'm waking up multiple times in the middle of the night or like really early in the morning and my brain immediately is going to something, like in this situation it was going to work all the time, like I couldn't shut my brain off, and just I in my body and in my mind I felt really stagnant. So I, even though if I did get sleep, I'd still feel really really tired. I was like not excited to show up and do the things that I needed to do in my business. Like Mondays became an issue again where I was like, oh crap, I have to go back to work. And not to say that, like, right, it's okay to have some bad Mondays or like to not want to show up to work and to do things. But for me, like, my passion was really zapped. And I just like was really struggling to maintain my mood and my energy on a daily basis. And that for me is a huge sign of like, whoa, whoa, whoa. what's happening. I need to kind of take a step back and evaluate, what was I working on and have I made progress towards it? Or is it what's not feeling good and how do I change that? And that could be anything from like big things within my business, like how I, signed up to that program. But before that, I knew I needed to get back into like doing yoga. I hadn't been like prioritizing body movement for me, which is really huge. And so I started to like scale things back of like, instead of adding things to my plate, I was like, all right, what can I strip back? I'm going to focus on a little bit more of like reading leisurely. Like it always does me really well. And I started there and then I started to feel like I had space and I was like, okay, now I'm going to like make sure I'm getting back into my yoga. And then that gave me kind of the newfound energy to then go and seek this like new program that I signed up for. So that's kind of how I evaluate it and like the steps I take when I start to notice it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of people don't recognize like the mental health aspect because they might just feel like the emotion happy, sad, frustrated, stressed. Like you don't necessarily associate that sometimes with like directly with life events that are happening. You might just be feeling that emotion and not really understand like why. But I think this is a really good way like to step back and evaluate what's going on. Is if you start feeling those emotions, let's say one day you're like, having the time of your life, like you're literally, everything feels like it's in flow, and then a few weeks later suddenly your mood has completely dropped and like you're finding everyday life a little bit challenging, and you're waking up, like you say, thinking about the same thing repetitively over and over again. Like let's just say, for example, I don't know, like your company isn't doing very well and potentially you might be made redundant. Obviously, like you're going to be thinking about that on a repetitive basis, but unfortunately that situation is kind of out of your control. The only thing you could really do in that circumstance is maybe look for other opportunities if you know that that may not be your job anymore. But for example, things that are in your control and that can be changed, they're things that you can definitely say, right, okay, this situation, like let's say you're in a relationship and you're waking up every day like anxious about the status of that relationship, you can control that anxiety and you can evaluate like why you feel that particular way, and then make a change about to do something about it. Exactly what you just was talking about in your business, where you were struggling with certain elements of it. You made the change. You changed the mentor. You changed the strategy, and you moved your business into a different direction. Well, we can do that with our lives as well, and I think quite a lot of people don't actually realize that we can do that with our lives.
Well, I think it all comes back to that awareness, right? Like if you're not aware of like yourself, if you're not aware of your different emotions, if you're not paying attention to the thoughts that are running through your head, it's very easy then to be like, well, there's nothing that I can do. Like, I don't know what to do. Because when we are aware, we acknowledge what's happening internally for ourselves, that gives us a sense of power. Like now we know what it is that we're thinking and we're feeling and what we would like to be different. And now we have the power to make the decision to change those things. Now, I'm not saying that like making those changes is easy, especially if you've never like if you're on the start of your self-healing mental wellness journey. It's a learning curve, guys. It takes a minute to find the behaviors and practices that help for you. Once you get it going though and you figure it out and you get in a good path, sometimes we fall out of it because we're human beings, but it'll be easier every time you have to return to it. And that's the whole point, is that we're paying attention, we're taking a moment to evaluate, to check our progress. Hey, where was I 2 months ago? And what am I doing now? And am I on the path that originally I had set with the goals that I wanted? Like I wanted to be doing more yoga. I wanted to be doing more reading. I wanted X, Y, and Z. And I think that's why doing something like evaluate your life day, doing it repeatedly, not just once, is it can be really, really beneficial to help you feel like you have a greater sense of control over your decisions in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a thing called the wheel of life, right? And it's a very commonly used strategy and approach in therapy. So if you went to most types of therapy would probably start you off based on this approach, right? Because they would look at like all of the different elements of your life. So you've got your health, you've got your relationships, you've got your family life, you've got your home environment life, you've got your career, you've got what other ones are there? There's spirituality, learning, growth, correct me if I'm making these up. But I think there's a whole loads of different elements of your life, right? Like you don't just live in one situation. You don't just have relationships. You don't just have your health. You don't just have your career. Like you've got so many different areas of life. And usually when you go into, let's say, cognitive behavioral therapy, initially they will try and get you to rate how you feel about all different areas of your life. And this is a really good exercise that I would recommend people to do if you are starting to feel a little bit stagnant or a little bit down about your situation that you're currently in. Identify where that emotion is coming from, because you can identify, like I actually did it this morning for myself because I've got a lot going on in my life right now. So I tried to like figure out exactly where the pain point of my life currently is. And it's about like rating your circumstances in each area of your life, how happy you are or how much you're enjoying that part of your life, or if there's certain things that you're not enjoying about that area of your life, and like rating it on a scale of 1 to whatever. And then you can kind of identify, right, okay, in my relationships I feel like a 10, like I'm really happy with the way that things are going, or in my career I'm a 5, so I'm kind of like a bit neutral. What can I do to make it a 6 or a 7 or an 8? So you can kind of identify like where the problem is, and then you can kind of start to figure out, right, okay, I don't need to evaluate this piece in too much detail, but this area here is where I'm really struggling, and that's where I need to then deep dive into the situation and like how to improve it. I don't know, do you know, you probably know more about the wheel of life situation than I do. Have you got anything else to kind of add on that point?
No, I think I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the wheel of life. So, I mean, for those who don't know, it looks like a pie. So you have a circle, and then each slice is a different area of your life, right? Your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, your relationships, your work, your social side of things. And you can pick and choose what you put into those slices based on like what are most important to you in your life. And then, as Sophie said, you fill it in up to a certain level. So if I'm at like a 2 in one area versus a 5 in another, and you'll see that your pie then looks like half filled in like smaller pieces. And the whole point of the wheel of life is how can you get them to have kind of like that balance where they're all at a 5, or they're all very close, they're all floating within that 8 and 6 mark of one another. The only thing that I would have added is that like doing it and quantifying it with a metric like that, like saying this is a 5 versus like a 6 or an 8, it gives you something that you can measure progress against. So let's say you do your wheel of life now, you know, you rate each area of life based on a number scale, 10 being like the most fulfilled. You can look at those numbers, and then maybe, you know, if you do this once a quarter in your life, right? So it's 4 times a year that you do this. You can look at it the last time that you did it and be like, oh, interesting. Like I'm actually feeling like way more satisfied in this area of life compared to what I did 3 months ago. And it shows like where did you make progress, or maybe where you didn't, and what do you need to put a little more time and energy and focus on.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do it in different ways, right? You could do it, I don't know, every morning, every Monday, or every morning when you wake up. Like
Hmm.
you don't need to kind of set this on like a yearly basis or a quarterly basis. You could do this daily and track your progress throughout the week, and then you'll be able to really identify like how things are changing and developing for you on a daily basis. Or you could be fine on a daily basis and you could do this monthly. Like there doesn't need to be like a set time period where you do this over. It could literally be however frequently you want to explore this. And then maybe you identify, you know, that you've got like challenges in various different areas of your life. Now quite often, if you have challenges, for example, in finances, it's not uncommon that you would also have challenges in your relationships as well, because they are quite linked, mainly because of kind of self what's the word, like self belief patterns and limiting belief patterns that attach to both of those. So if you were struggling, I don't know, with like trying to find your dream job, but you're also struggling with trying to find your dream partner, there's a possibility that potentially you've got like limiting beliefs holding you back in both areas of that. So you might also see some kind of like synchronicities across your different areas of the wheel of life. and then actually you evaluating that, you might come to the same conclusion that whatever the resolution is for like one area might actually also coincide with the resolution for another area as well. So I think it's a really great way to start understanding yourself better. It's a really great way to start understanding different elements of your life and like what things may or may not need to change. And I mean, everybody goes through peaks and troughs in life. It's quite rare for somebody to probably have like tens, a full circle coloured in on that wheel of
Yeah.
life. It is probably going to vary quite a lot for different people. And like we say, you go through different seasons in life. So going through all of those seasons, your wheel is going to look very different from a spring to a winter, for example. So yeah, I think it's a really useful exercise to do, and it's one that I think is really underrated. Like I think we get so lost in like the day to day running of our lives and like just focusing on one specific goal, but we completely forget to actually analyze what's actually happening and take action on that. We're just so focused on like moving forward and moving the needle, when actually this evaluation phase can actually get us closer and closer to the goals, because we can pinpoint the exact things that are maybe holding us back from them. I know that's definitely been the case for me. I've had to do a lot of self-reflection in various different elements of my life recently, and I think I wouldn't be getting closer to my goals if I hadn't have done those self-reflection exercises. I think it's a really important piece, particularly if you've got goals, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're kind of circling the key points around like doing an evaluate your life day. Well, first and foremost, as Sophie said, you could do it at whatever frequency you want, but bare minimum, you have to do it twice a year. You do it once and then see at like, at the end of that year, do it again to see like, you have to something to compare to. But what Sophie's kind of touching on here is, right, you're doing a reflection on how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're behaving, and it's really a glimpse into how you're actually behaving and performing in your everyday life, right? And if you don't know that information, how are you supposed to make any changes? If you don't know where you're at and if you don't know where you want to go, you have no starting point and you have no destination point. So it's really important, I think, with the whole evaluate your life kind of technique or practice, is that you do a reflection on all of those things of how are you thinking, feeling, and behaving. And then you identify, looking at that, what would you like to be different? And what does that look like in practice? Right? Like I would like to, so for example, I'm feeling sluggish and I feel like I've gained weight and I'm not happy about that. So I would like to get back into doing weightlifting and throw in a little bit of yoga, let's say, right? So these are the things that I want to do. And so now I have like, this is where I'm at. This is what I would like to achieve. And then see if I can start taking small action steps to changing that. It doesn't have to be perfect where you're working out 7 days a week, you're weightlifting all the time, you're doing yoga all the time, but like, can you show up 3 times a week to move your body? To do weightlifting, maybe yoga twice or vice versa, right? And then how does that look a number of months later? Or because usually like we start to feel and see the benefits a few weeks later, so like a month later, or a quarter later, or at the end of the year if you were consistently doing it. And then like how do you feel then? I think it's, again, as we talk about in TINAH all the time, it is about awareness, like being aware of who you are, what you do, and what you bring to the table. Because at the end of the day, the only one who can make any changes to your life, I mean, outside circumstances sometimes just rail us. Like life happens and it's really hard and we don't have control over that, but there are a lot of things we do have control over. How we respond to those situations, how do we make the changes that we want to see for ourselves? Like I think about it all the time when I would travel. It was like in the beginning, I didn't have money. Like I had enough money for traveling, but I didn't have like luxury for money. And I hadn't been working, let's just say after my first year of traveling, I hadn't been like working where I was making a consistent income. So it was like, oh crap, like I don't have money. But I wanted to make sure that I was managing my anxiety and my depression. So moving my body was super important for me. That did not stop me from working out in my tiny ass dorm room like every couple days, or finding a spot in a hostel that I could go and do an exercise, or going to a local park nearby and doing exercise. You don't need money to do that. You just And sometimes I didn't have a mat. I just used like a towel and then some clothes under my knees if my knees hurt, right? There are limitations, but you'll do what you need to do if you want to improve certain areas of your life. And we're the only people who, like, at the end of the day, like, we're the only ones that can make the changes for ourselves. And this is like the starting step of doing that.
Yeah, I think the first step is recognizing that we're in control, right? Like I say, there are examples in some circumstances where you are out of control, but for the most part of most areas of our life, we are in control, and we are the creators of our lives. We are the people that are only people that are going to get us the goals. No one else is going to take responsibility for that in your life for you. And I think recognizing that is like the kind of pivotal point from you sitting and doing nothing about it, sitting in your shit and like just feeling sad about the situation, the circumstances that you're in. Please respect your emotions and allow yourself to do that if that's how you feel. But then there has to come a point where you have to turn the tables a little bit and move into that phase where it's like, oh, okay, I can control the shitty relationship I'm in. I can control the fact that my business isn't working right now. What can I do to change it? Or I can control the job that I hate. You can switch these things up. I'm not telling you it's easy by any means, but there are things that you are in control of that you are able to change. And it might not be an overnight fix. It might not be going to happen tomorrow, but you can create a strategic plan to kind of figure out how you're going to make those changes and how you're going to get to where you want to be. And I think, like you just said, the first step is kind of becoming aware of it. The second step is kind of realizing that you're in control of it. And then I think the next bit is kind of doing that self-reflection work to understand exactly what needs to be done. So you do the wheel of life, and then journaling is something that can really help you understand better about the situation that you're currently in. And just to give you some examples of questions that potentially you could ask yourself, or questions you could potentially journal on, I've got a list of a few here. And I think one thing I think is really important is how you set yourself up for the day, and how you're going to tackle these challenges. So I think one of these, like a really important one here is, am I waking up in the morning ready to take on today's challenges? Because every day, this is life, this is real life is a bit challenging. So like if you can kind of set yourself up in the day to tackle whatever it is ahead of you, whatever problems you have are going to feel like 10 times lighter. And I'm not saying that, we don't have problems, we definitely do, but it's going to feel easier to manage them if you are setting yourself up for the day. And this is kind of, TINAH kind of comes into play here, because we are trying to recommend routines and changes in your day to help you evaluate your situations and help you change things and behaviors in your life, so that when you get to the point of realizing that actually this piece of my life I'm not happy with, I need to make a change, we're here to give you the resources to kind of set you up on those new routines. And I think this one here, am I waking up in the morning to take on the day's challenges, that's a really good question that you can ask yourself every single day, and identify something in your day to day behaviors and habits to make changes. um, the other things that are on here, am I letting things that I can't control stress me out too much? So again, we can only control what's within our control, right? We can't worry about the things that are out of our control, because we cannot do anything. We can only control the things that are happening. So going back to that example that I gave earlier, okay, you know that your job may be on the line, maybe your potentially company is going under and you're potentially going to be made redundant. You can't control that happening. You have absolutely no control over that situation. But what you do have control over is deciding whether you want to risk the opportunity and stay in the job and potentially later on down the line get made redundant, or you make the change to switch jobs, seek out other opportunities, have those conversations with potential future employers, put yourself out there, do your CV, get yourself ready. They are the things in your control, but you cannot do anything about the situation with the company, because it's not your company. Like, you work for them, but like it's unlikely that you're about to make a big change that's going to save this situation. So focusing on the things that are in your control is where the stress should be, not in the things that are out of your control. So allowing yourself to identify the things that are causing you the stress, and then figuring out, is it in your control, is it not in your control, and then what can you do about it. I really like this one. What do I wish to be known for? and like how do you wish to like show up on a day-to-day basis? Because I think again we often just get caught up in our like behaviors and our routines and our programming, that we kind of forget to say, is this actually how I want to be acting? Because we're so like caught up in the day-to-day of it. So just having a reflection of being like, right, okay, what do I actually, how do I want other people to perceive me, and am I acting in a way that is gonna represent that and reflect that? Because there's been a lot of times in my life where I've been like, right, I'm this person, this is who I want to be, and then my behavior will speak differently, or like the words that I say will speak differently. And I think that there's often a disconnect between the person that we think we want to be and the person that we actually are. So trying to kind of like push yourself back into alignment with the person that you want to be, and trying to figure out the behaviors and the way of living that that person that you want to be would live, you can kind of make your way back to that. What else is on here that I think is really good? Do you trust yourself? Like, do I trust myself, like, to make the right decisions? Do you trust yourself to have a great day today? Do you trust yourself to be happy? Like, do you trust yourself to make the right decisions in your relationships and be with the right people? I think that that's a really nice one to kind of reflect on. If you don't trust yourself, how can you expect anybody else to trust you? So allowing yourself to reflect on some of these points can really help guide the things again that you need to start working on. And what else? Am I achieving the goals that I set for myself? So if you're not achieving those goals, like we said at the beginning, like maybe there's like barriers or blocks or something that's preventing you from actually achieving those goals. So it's about identifying like, why are these blocks happening? Like, why do you want that thing? Like, is that goal actually the goal that you want to be achieving? Or is it actually, you know, that's come from a place of ego or a place of like wanting it because somebody else has got it? I think you need to be really tuned in to think, is this goal for you? And like, why are you not currently achieving it? Because there's probably an underlying reason as to why you're not achieving it. Because if you're taking the action steps that are the right action steps to get there, and you've kind of done the work on yourself to believe that you can achieve the goal, you should be taking natural steps forward. Have you got anything else to kind of, is there any other questions that you want to kind of talk to that you think might be relevant to kind of help identify if you are or are not on the right path?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of like the big higher thinking ones. I think sometimes basics are also real. I mean, basics are really important. So I think, right, asking yourself, am I getting enough sleep every night? Do like you asked, am I waking up like ready to take on the day? How's my energy levels throughout the day? Do I like, what do I feel like in the morning compared to the afternoon to the evening? Am I eating enough? Am I doing regular daily self-care? And I'm not talking about self-care of like I'm taking a bubble bath, but like, are you taking a shower each day? Like, when's the last time you clipped your nails? Like, the basics of taking care of yourself to kind of feel good in your body. Have I moved my body at all this week? Some of those basics can also be really, they can shine a really bright light on the areas of our lives that, one, they're the foundations that make us feel good. And if we start to address those, we can like we can have the space and energy to take on those bigger things, those larger goals. So I think looking at both of those aspects, both like a zoomed in version of how have you been, acting and behaving and thinking and feeling on a day by day basis. And then what are some of the larger perspectives of, do I feel like I'm living in my values? Do I feel like I'm achieving the goals that I want to be achieving, and a lot of the other questions that Sophie asked. So I would just say have a mix of the two, and we can absolutely put a list of questions out for you guys and attach it to the episode notes so that you have that and you can start kind of taking action on it right at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes when we could do all of this evaluation, but sometimes we don't even know where the end goal is, like where do we even want to be going? And I think that's another element of this process, is to identify, well, what is it actually that you do want? And yeah, again, journaling is a really great way to kind of identify that if you haven't got a clue of like the destination that you're trying to get to. But another really powerful exercise that I've personally used a lot in my life is like visualization exercises. I can't speak today. Visualization exercises that are going to help you identify like to see where you want to go. Like, because I think sometimes we can't see something to be possible for us until we've either seen it in somebody else doing it or visualized ourselves getting to that point. And this is where, like we've spoken about manifestation previously, and there is like a scientific way to describe manifestation as well, but it's kind of like trying to visualize where you want to be so that you can kind of get yourself closer to that point. And I think you can use things like vision boarding, you can use like different journal prompts to like identify like where you want to go, and just thinking about like the end goal basically of like when you do all of this self-reflection work, where do you want to be? So if it's like, okay, you're not currently, let's say in your relationship life, you're not particularly happy, let's say that's a 2 on your wheel of life because maybe you're single and you didn't really want to be single, or you've just gone through a breakup or whatever. You can then visualize and like start journaling on different things that you want to experience in your next relationship, because maybe you had not the best experience in your past relationship. So you can start visualizing like how you want to feel, how you want to be treated by somebody in your relationship, like how you see your life panning out together if you were to go the distance with that person, and start visualizing these things so that you can kind of start to create the graphic of what that actually looks like, because that sometimes helps really motivate you to take the steps towards it. um, did you have something to add on that point, Kelsey?
Yeah, I think, everyone knows AI is blowing up these days, but I think ChatGPT could be a really good resource for people because if you've never done an exercise like this and you're not really sure the questions to ask yourself or how to kind of like dig deeper into this, you can literally do the rating. You don't have to do the wheel, but you can do the rating of on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute best. I feel this when it comes to my relationships, to my mental health, my physical health, um my relationships, my work, my social activities, right? You can feed all of this into ChatGPT, for example, and say, I would like you to help me identify what sort of changes I can realistically make in order to elevate my quality of life in each area of my life. Can you here please analyze this information and ask me a series of questions to help me identify what sort of behaviors and habits I can do to start working on this. And then it can ask a series of questions. And maybe by the end of it, you're like, oh, so yeah, I do need to like move my body and be really honest with ChatGPT, right? Like, I can't do weightlifting because I severely injured myself, or I'm not comfortable with I don't like running, or I don't like high intensity cardio stuff. So what are my other options, right? Like, you can ask questions back and you can have a conversation back and forth. And then when you start to kind of get a grasp of, okay, so certain goals based on where I'm at would be like, oh, I need to move my body a little bit more. I should be making a phone call to a loved one, every week or so to feel that connection. I need to start deciding if I'm going to pivot my career and start researching and exploring other options, right? So there's all of these things, all of these goals, which can be really overwhelming. You can then proceed to ask ChatGPT, can you can you write a day in the life of me doing these things in a realistic way? Give me 1 to 3 days a day in my life of actually implementing these behaviors and habits in a realistic way that feels good, right? And it'll give you like, you wake up at 6:30 in the morning and you do your morning routine that includes X, Y, and Z of whatever it is that you established before. And now you've got kind of like this pathway story, and you can always ask ChatGPT to put it in the I statement rather than the third person. So when you're reading it, it's like, I'm going to do, like, I did this, or I da 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 da. And those are some of the most powerful statements. And then you can use that for your visualization, like Sophie was talking about, where you start to like really think about, okay, yeah, I wake up at 6:30 and I do this because it's going to help me and make me feel good. And then the point is that after visualization is you take baby steps and actions to start implementing new things. What people don't realize, there's a study, and I'm going to butcher it right now. I believe it's an MRI, but like, where if you put your hand in front of your face and you're looking at your hand and they are doing an MRI on your brain, certain areas of your brain light up. If I remove my hand and I close my eyes and I imagine my hand in front of my face, the same areas of my brain light up. The brain cannot tell the difference between imagine and reality. It doesn't know the difference. So as you continue to visualize and imagine yourself doing these things, it will create less of a resistance for you to show up and implement new behaviors. But the point still is that you still have to take small, consistent actions where you keep trying and implementing rather than the whole like, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't go well for a week, I'm done, right? That's just not how we function as human beings. And so I think that's just a nice little caveat reminder that like we can evaluate our life. It's not meant to make us feel bad, but it's just meant to make us aware of where we're at and what's going on, to start helping identify where we want to go. And then you take the baby steps to start implementing and making those changes.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to address the fact that, like, if you're not taking the action, if you're not um, getting anywhere, even if you are taking the action, you need to like kind of ask yourself why, because there could be some kind of underlying reasoning for why you're getting stuck in that fear state, or you're in that freeze mode where you don't take any action, and you're like, you need to do all of these things, but you're not taking the action. So it's kind of like, well, why? Like, what is preventing you from doing that? Because there could be reasons that are within yourself that might be holding you back. So you might have some kind of limiting belief to say, like, you don't believe that you can actually get to your goal. So you could do all of this evaluation and you could set the goal, but unless you believe that you can go and achieve it, that's probably going to be holding you back in quite a lot of different ways. Or you don't feel good enough to have the thing that you want, or maybe you don't believe it's possible because you've never seen anybody else to have it. So identifying, like, is there anything actually holding you back, that is you personally holding yourself back? Is it that you've got a limiting belief? Is it a mindset fear, where you just can't seem to stop those negative thought patterns that are coming into your brain to say, you can't do this, you can't do this? Like, what is it that you need to change internally as well, the narrative, to allow you to get closer to it? Because yeah, you can take all the actions, but if you don't believe it to be true, quite often you will become up against big blocks and barriers with that. And it's also the same as kind of thinking about like getting outside of your comfort zone. Like, quite a lot of people will be like, oh no, that's scary, like I've never done it before, oh I can't go and talk to that stranger because what will they think of me? And trying to get out of your comfort zone, because in my personal opinion, and I believe this to be true because I've experienced it so many times myself, um, I think growth comes from getting out of your comfort zone and changing something that you've previously been scared to change. And I think a lot of us will never get out of our comfort zone because we're just in this nice little bubble. Why would we ever want to leave it? But ultimately, if you're unhappy about a situation, or you do this evaluation of your life and you figure out, actually, I'm not getting towards my goal in this specific area, doing an exercise where you push yourself out of your comfort zone on like a regular basis can be really beneficial for you. And you can take baby steps to do that. But I think you can kind of identify, like, if you're not taking the action that's going to get you closer to the goal, why are you not going outside your comfort zone far enough? Are you blocking yourself with your negative thoughts and your mindset and your beliefs? What is it that's preventing you from actually getting there? And that's kind of like, I'd guess the kind of end of the process is to push through those barriers, because you can take all the actions you want, but if you don't believe you can get there, that's going to be quite problematic at some point down the line, I think.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that like basically a lot of what holds us back is ourselves. And understandably so. We have developed and built a lot of narratives around how we are in the world, one out of protection, out of safety, two out of just that's what we learned from other people. But I think like it all comes back to understanding the sense of control that we have in our lives. And one of the things we do have control over are thoughts. And like we are not our thoughts. A lot of people associate their thoughts, like identify as themselves, but that is not the case. We can separate ourselves from it and we can say, like, okay, so what is this thought? Give it its own entity. If you need to imagine it, a little blobby character in your head or, another individual person that you name, whatever it is, but what is this thought trying to communicate to me? And a lot of times that when we separate ourselves from our thoughts, we can start to see where some of those unhelpful narratives are existing, where that fear is coming from. Although all of those emotions are super valid, doesn't mean we can't push past them to achieve something on the other side that's going to help us feel better. It's going to help us, live a life that feels more purposeful and joyful. And I think the reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sophie, the reason why we wanted to have this episode today about like evaluate your life day kind of thing is like, one, Tina, we're all about like being an active participant in our healing journey with our own mental health and our mental wellness. Now, don't get me wrong, genetics always play a factor, and there are some things that are outside of our control and we need additional support with. But there's still a huge portion that is dependent upon us to show up for ourselves and to figure out what's going to work best for us. And there's a lot of research behind, especially in like positive psychology, that when you feel like you're living your life with the best purpose and you're feeling joyful in what you're doing and you feel like you're working towards the things that you desire and that you deserve, we tend to have better mental health and we have better practices. It also leads to us creating better practices that cultivate mental wellness. And so that's a huge reason, I think, just why we wanted to have this episode. So I wanted to tie it back full circle to mental health, just so that, you guys remember why we're here, what we're talking about. But now I deter, but I let me know if I was like, a little too far off there, Sophie.
No, you hit the nail on the head, I think. And it is all about improving your mental health. Like, ultimately, if any area of our life isn't where we want it to be, that triggers certain feelings, triggers a certain emotion. And ultimately, over time, if that doesn't get resolved, then it can have a very significant impact on our mental health. So, yeah, it is all about improving our mental well being and trying to take control of the things that we can control. Because ultimately, our mental health is in our control. Like, we can change things, we can make things better for ourselves, we can improve our circumstances. Granted, everybody's got different situations and circumstances, but our mental health is within our control, and there are things that you can do even if you have absolutely no money, and even if you have very little time as well. Like, it doesn't take a lot of investment financially or time wise. You just need to be willing to put some effort in to change things around in your day-to-day life to make things better for yourself, and it is always possible. So I think, yeah, definitely exactly what you said. So in terms of some practical steps then that you can take, if you're sitting there thinking, do you know what, some areas of my life are definitely not where I want them to be, I'm not hitting my goals, some practical steps that you can kind of take next. First of all, it is that self-check-in and self-reflection exercise that we spoke about at the beginning. So whether that's through a wheel of life, whether that's through journaling prompts, however you want to do it, just do some kind of self-check-in. Could do it through meditation, whatever it looks like for you. That's going to be your first point of call in this evaluate your life day that you're going to go through. The second step could be, and this is an optional step if you feel comfortable asking for it, is asking for feedback from peers or colleagues or family, whoever it might be, some reflections on, you could go to your best mate and say, do you know what, I've been feeling really down about being single lately. What can you see? Like, is there anything from your side that maybe I'm attracting the wrong type of person, or whatever it might be, so that you can kind of get other people's thoughts and opinions on a certain situation in your life as well. Do a lot of journaling on it. I know not everybody resonates with journaling. I didn't resonate with journaling for a long time, but recently I've really got into it because it's a great way to just like literally release all of the thoughts that are in your brain onto paper so that you can just get rid of them. And I think it's a really good idea when you are trying to work through certain situations, like when we've been talking about the questions that you can use to self-reflect. Journaling is a great way to do that. And if you hate sitting there writing pen to paper, you could speak it into your notes app on your phone. You could literally write it as an app, not a note on your phone. You could type it on the computer, like whatever works for you. Doesn't need to be like a bullet pen journal kind of thing. You can literally figure out a way to record all of these answers for yourself. Trying to do the visualization, or you could even just create like a Pinterest board or something of like how you want your life to look. Set those goals and then create the action plan to try and achieve those goals. And if when you are taking those actions that you find yourself not able to achieve them, or not take the action at all, definitely work through and review if you have any self-limitations or self-negative beliefs that are not actually going to allow you to get there. And as you go through that kind of action plan that you've put for yourself, make sure you're regularly checking in and kind of doing this whole process throughout the process of achieving the goal as well, so that you can see if you're making improvements. Exactly what Kelsey said at the beginning of the episode. This is a great way to measure your progress. So if you said in your career, for example, you're only at a 2 right now, and you start taking some actions to get towards your goal, in a month's time you evaluate it again, maybe you're at a 5, in another month's time maybe you're at a 6, a 7, an 8, whatever it might be. It's a really good way to kind of track the progress that you're feeling and experiencing, and know then that you are on the right direction to actually achieving those goals. Anything that I've missed, do you think, Kelsey?
No, I think that I think you covered most of it, and I'm sure, guys, we sound a little redundant in awareness, 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 challenging your thoughts, and it's it's not easy, but I can say that it's worth it. It's worth it on the other side of everything. I mean, I've had some really dark moments in my life. I know Sophie has as well, and we've done a lot of work to work on ourselves. And even when we have hard moments now, it doesn't negate the moment being hard, but it's less scary, and we know we have the tools and the ability to work through it and still get onto the other side. And I think that's kind of what managing mental health throughout like the craziness that is life is all about. So I hope that this episode resonated with you guys. Thank you so much for kind of leading us through it, Sophie.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Until next time. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the TINAH Talks podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe. And if you love what we're talking about and are ready to start changing your life through your own healing journey, follow us on our socials at Time Is Not a Healer.
The TINAH Mental Wellbeing Marketplace is now live and ready to help you take control of your mental health. Head over to timeisnotahealer.com, where we'll provide you with the best toolkit for your self-healing journey.
All of the details can be found in the episode description below. Remember, you hold the power to heal. Until next time, you've got this.